welcome back. I am Sammy. Okay, so this is what I want to talk about today, and this is very ill prepared. Sorry, very ill prepared because it's something that I talk about all the time with like my peers. It's one of those things that you hear about in art circles, creative circles, all the time. And it's fucking annoying. It's fucking annoying. I'm going to start off as like a very firm hater of the narrative that I'm going to get into, which is I would call it the myth of the tortured artist. Let me give you some background. What is a tortured artist? What is this? What is the stereotype? What is the myth? The myth/stereotype of the tortured artist is the idea that, the most powerful, influential artists out there or historically have been motivated by or inspired by, deep inner turmoil, depression, mental illness, horrible things happening on in their lives. There is nothing wrong with creating work from any of those things. Nothing wrong with creating work from all of my work is depressing. Not all of it, that's not true. A lot of it's depressing. And a lot of like life is depressing, and a lot of like the things that we do and encounter and feel are heavy and hard, and it can be a unifying factor to be like, hey, I feel that too. Hey guys, I feel that too. And you're like not in like the cavern of loneliness anymore. But that's not the issue. The issue isn't can we or should we create out of a place of deep inner turmoil. This is about the idea that you need to be a good artist. The best work comes out of this. And a lot of people, and we can argue about if you prefer sad work or happy work or work that is more comfortable or less comfortable or whatever. That's a discussion that like is super subjective. But objectively, we're going to talk about objectively my opinion, not objective, my opinion on the idea that an artist must maintain discomfort, inner turbulence, and experiences that are difficult, choose the path of non-recovery to maintain the most ample creativity, let's say that, or their best work. Someone might say that my best work comes from the hardest things. That's actually less about, in my opinion, less about the strength of the emotion and more about the ability to articulate that and how consumed and how we relate to those feelings. Like, I used to only write depressing things. I used to subscribe to this idea that you had to be a tortured artist, that like shit, what happens? Like, I remember when I was like, if I go on antidepressants, I'm not going to be able to create anymore. I have been on antidepressants for every painting I've ever done, like that you've seen. So a lot of the time, like, we tell ourselves these things, I think, because we're familiar with these feelings more than not. We've scoped these feelings out. They're relatively comfortable, albeit uncomfortable in the wide scheme compared to things like joy and playfulness and curiosity and love. But it's pretty concrete in the sense that like I'm not really scared of what depression is going to tell me because I've heard it all before. I'm scared that I'm going to feel joyful and then my depression's still going to be the more desirable, or the more I'm more inclined, or it could be taken away from me. These are all, like that, it's easier to sit in the sadness because of all these, fears that surround maybe more comfortable feelings. So in that regard, the tortured artist is a comfortable trope, and we can create work out of comfort, and we can create work because we've developed over time the language and the inner narrative to articulate that, whether that is like visually or otherwise. We have that kind of foundation to start from. Now, do we need it? No, fuck no. In fact, I think the only thing you need to be a creative person, to produce creative work, is curiosity. And that is curiosity in your feelings, but also in your thoughts. You think one thing, okay, well, what does that mean? What could that look like? How could I display that to others? And it's familiarizing yourself with the language, and then you create great work. Because it's just that. It's just like if you were to learn a new language tomorrow and you're set up in a conversation with someone who's fluent, and it's like, well, how am I supposed to? I haven't sat with joy. I haven't sat with playfulness. I haven't sat with love. I haven't sat with gratitude for long enough to really understand how to articulate that. And so when I do, maybe I stumble. Maybe my grammar isn't right. Maybe the way I articulate it is something that is like deeply personal to me. And someone might look at that and be like, oh, that's a little bit like X. And it's not exactly how you wanted to interpret it. That might happen. But as you practice the understanding of these experiences and the articulation of these experiences, find inspiration as you maintain curiosity despite the fact that these feelings are maybe something that are unfamiliar or foreign to you. That's it, baby. There's no fine print. There's nothing that's saying You as an artist, you are obliged to, in order to create your best work, maintain addictions, maintain depression or mental illness, or maintain toxic relationships or just toxic behaviors with yourself or with your communities or with whatever. No, no. No. And I don't believe that like a universe, whatever orientation of the universe, or whatever it is that you believe in, there is not one articulation of the universe where I'm like that there's any shoulds or coulds, or like there's no, you have to be depressed, you have to be sad, you have to be tortured, you have to be so psychologically like charged in this painful way that you can create, and that's the only way. And so now you as an artist are doomed to an eternity, a human eternity, so a lifetime of this feeling just so that you can create work that is meaningful to you. No. And respectfully, it's a skill issue. And I'm not saying skill issue, you can't do it. I'm saying it's a practice thing. You need to practice. You need to practice. You need to practice. You need to practice. It actually frustrates me because I know that this narrative that we tell ourselves is just a thought, a pattern, and a behavior that is reinforced by the status quo of our own mental illnesses. Like, I know that your ego is just like, no. Stay depressed. Hey, stay depressed, because it's exactly what I want you to do. Please stay depressed. Stay depressed. You're only more inspired if you're depressed. You're only more, engaged with the depth of these feelings. No, you just haven't walked far enough into joy, or far enough into presence, or far enough into all of these things to have that comparison even be effective. That is, point blank. It's just incorrect. And I'm living proof of it. I have my notes app filled with probably the most embarrassing things, going back to a very embarrassing age, where I wrote about things where I was very depressed, when I still subscribed to the belief that I had to be that depressed, that I had to be more depressed, that I should stay depressed. It wasn't truly coming from an appreciation for my work or an appreciation for the development of my skills. It was coming from my brain not wanting to do the work to get better. And I'm also not saying that it's easy. It's like the way that obviously I hear the words coming out of my mouth makes it sound like it's easy to just like put the work in and now you're not depressed. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist, psychiatrist, none of that. I'm a person who is like coming to you as a peer and saying, like, myself, I have depression, I have anxiety, I have these things that, when in my experience I sat with the decision to try things that made my experience better, or maintain the craft that was comfortable because of the depth of the depression I was having or experiencing, because of my perceptions of the world and my perceptions of my reality and my immediate circles and the the scope of my existence, I still chose joy, in part because I was like, well, pretty shit trade-off. Sorry. Like, at least there's things I enjoy that aren't, creating, that I can still fall deeply in love with, but also just like the expansiveness of these feelings. And when you realize that it's like, it's not like, depression is this bottomless pit, and, which it can feel like, and, joy and laughter and playfulness and all of these things are shallow. It's just that that's where you've been. You've walked through that, so you can really gauge that spaciousness that you can't gauge with things that maybe have been more fleeting, or just haven't had the opportunity to explore. So I don't blame anyone for falling into this. I did, but it wasn't until that I took some personal steps that made it easier for me to cope with my depression that I was able to realize that, like, my work is actually much better when I love the world and I love the work that I do, and I want to do things in a meaningful way, even if they come from feelings that are harder. Like, even if I have a painting that's about grief, or a poem that's about grief, and which is one of the most, difficult, complex, persistent feelings that are incredibly uncomfortable and unavoidable, might I add, that even still, there's an act of loving in that I'm articulating just my experience. It's a wider part of this whole, and it's not just this like bottomless experience of just like wanting nothing but suffering to pursue your craft. There's so much, and there's so many things that inspire, and honestly, often it's the juxtaposition that really gets me personally, knowing that life experiences this, like, in a very broad sense, duality. Obviously everything is nuanced, but the fact that we have comfort and discomfort and contractions and release, and we have, an inhale and exhale in our lives, and we have these things that feel opposing, that we must kind of admit to ourselves in the pursuit of creativity that the depth of each is equal, and that perhaps the experience of the like the more complicated, the more painful, the more heavy and seemingly inescapable feelings might have that same just that ability to be as engulfed in those feelings as you are in things that are more joyful and light and freeing. And you really don't have to stay in anything to be anyone. You don't have to stay a certain way to be a creator. The whole point of being a creative person of any kind, of being an artist, is to invent things. If we are only coming at it from one pot, we're like, yeah, we're gonna pull from the depression pot always. We're not asking enough questions to pursue creativity in its widest scope, in our full ability. We're not. It's actually incredibly self-limiting. And though you may create beautiful and meaningful and impactful art, it doesn't mean, that's not the only well you should be drawing from. Because also people want to know that like it's okay to like really lean into joy, to really lean into happiness, because there's so many reminders all the time that we shouldn't. We feel guilty because we feel joy when there's things going on in the world, in our lives. We feel like it's necessary to suffer because it's a part of this. And it's one thing to say like, yeah, suffering is innate to life, suffering is a part of, everyone has their shit, everyone has something going on. It's another to say that this is inevitable in all scenarios, and I don't need to explore other sensations because everyone has to deal with this anyways. Everyone also has the capacity for joy, everyone also has the capacity for love, and often people are on their own pursuits of it in their own way. I think the most meaningful art is the art that depicts humanity, and that's part of it. Joy, joy. We're so hesitant to share it with the world. We're so hesitant to show people, because what if it's taken away? What if I'm bragging about joy? What if I say this is something I have. It feels good. It feels warm. I feel content operating in my world, and then someone takes it away, or something takes it away, or the impermanence and the cycle of life just happens to bring me back to a place of discomfort. So I just like stay there. Frankly, I'm too bored for that. I can't. I used to, and I think, like I said, like the work that I made, it feels so shallow now, even though at the time it was from a place that was just like so hurt all the time from every angle. Just being a depressed person, it felt so like on a visceral level, that there was just like nothing further into like the abstract experience of emotion than this work. And now I look at it and I'm just like, that was not it. It was part of it, a big part of it, and a big part of it for that time in my life, but I sold myself short in so many ways, in so many parts of my life. And I look back and I think, oh, what if I saw that for what it was? What if I saw the love I had in my life? What if I saw, and depression makes it hard, mental illness makes it hard. I'm not saying that it doesn't, because it did for me. And you have to practice self-compassion when you look back, because you can't help sometimes that that's how it went. But in knowing what you know about the world, about the human experience, about life, about loving, and about grieving, and about being here, don't we know better than you need to be sad to make good art? It's a little reductive, right? Like if art is imitating life, life is imitating art, if all these things are in this constant, and of course you got to add nature to that, art imitates life, life is art, nature, all these things. Anyways, you look at these things, life, art, and nature, and it's like, wait. I'm like really harping on this one thing, and that's kind of a lot. Like not like in a bad way. Like I'm not saying that like you're a shitty person if you did this, but just that like you're selling yourself short. You're selling yourself short, so short. You don't need to be tortured. You don't need to like, grimes it up and like go, cosplay poverty so that you can figure out what it's like to be a person in those situations, and find some, maybe someone will find you relatable or edgy or cool because you have more hardened experiences. No, people don't want to be going through that. That's the point. The point of it is that you opting in and out is not a part of that experience. Same thing with depression. Opting in or out is not a part of that experience. It's incremental changes that get people out of depression. It's incremental decisions, small but powerful and meaningful decisions. And it's a mental illness, so it's there. I still struggle with depression. I'm on antidepressants for life. Like I will never not be on them. So it's just like so silly to me that we would like really dig our teeth and our claws into this like, no, be sad, be depressed. That will make you a cool artist. That will make you more meaningful, more relatable. No, how about you just be honest? Hey, you don't want to know what's really relatable? Authenticity. Like, I want to see myself in you, and I know that from the richness of my own perception that you have that richness in yours, and I'm hoping when I create through my own experience that perhaps a part of you sees yourself here. It's just not that deep. We don't need to cling to it so deeply. For the betterment of your craft, the betterment of your own life and your experience and your time on earth as a creator, a creative, an artist of any kind, is to just really like be that, create life, which is all things. And we exclude so much of our lives by harping on the tortured artist belief. Truly, truly. And like, I would much rather see someone talk about the difficulties of life through the confusing and complex reality of the juxtaposition between the way we experience the hard things and the easy things. And sometimes the hard things are ones that feel better. Like sometimes joy is harder. It is. It's about how well we subscribe to the belief that we have to be a certain way to create, and how we choose to maintain or not maintain behaviors to subscribe to whatever end we end up on that. I just come back to, if I chose creating depressed, like as a depressed person, I sacrifice so much the rest of my life. And like, art is everything to me, creating is everything to me, writing is everything to me, and finding ways to articulate my experience is the way that I carry on. And I only do so through the lens of like, there's so much out there. Even though this is such a big part of my life, even though all of these things, life is not irredeemable without it. And I would much rather have a very full experience than make art off of one feeling all the time. Like, I promise you, you'll create fantastic art, meaningful, just as relatable, and your life will be changed all the better for it. You'll become more creative. You'll enter, a space where your rest becomes helpful in creating more. Anyways, I think I'm just kind of talking in circles now, but the point is that you don't need to be a tortured artist. You don't need to be tortured. You don't need to be falling into the pits of despair to create something good. You can just live as a person does, which happens to have despair just as much as it happens to have joy, and become inspired by it all through curiosity and observation. That's it, baby. It's that simple. It's really not, but it's simply said.